From Queen to Saint. A girl of just 12 years old who married a king and became the Queen of Portugal. Today's curiosities are about Saint Isabel of Portugal. Here are 12 curiosities about her. 12. Special birth. Saint Isabel, born in 1271 in Spain, had a beginning that foretold her spiritual greatness. Her birth was surrounded by a special mystery. She came into the world enveloped in an intact amniotic sac, a phenomenon considered extremely rare. This extraordinary detail was interpreted by many as a sign of divine blessing, suggesting that Isabel was destined for a significant purpose from the moment of her arrival. This episode not only highlighted the uniqueness of her life but also symbolized the protection and care of God from her birth. The Catholic tradition often sees such events as omens of lives that will be dedicated to divine service. Over the years, Saint Isabel would become known for her generosity and devotion, following a path that reflected the promises made at her birth. This special beginning would not only mark her personally but also leave an indelible mark on the history of the Church and the devotion of the faithful. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe so you don't miss any curiosities about the saints. 11. Political marriage. Saint Isabel was married to King Dom Dinis of Portugal at just 12 years old in an arranged marriage aimed at strengthening political alliances between royal families. This union, typical of the time, reflected the common practice of strategic marriages, where political interests often took precedence over personal desires. Isabel, however, stood out for her wisdom and compassion, characteristics that would shape her life in the court. Despite the difficulties that an arranged marriage could entail, Isabel developed a deep love and respect for her husband. Dom Dinis, known as the Farmer King, was a monarch who promoted reforms and sought the welfare of his people, and Isabel became a faithful collaborator in his initiatives. Together, they worked to improve the living conditions of peasants and promote social justice, something that Isabel always ardently defended. 10. Children. Saint Isabel of Portugal had 2 children with King Dom Dinis of Portugal. Constança of Portugal was born in 1290 when Isabel was 19. Constança married Fernando IV of Castile, becoming Queen Consort of Castile. Afonso IV of Portugal was born in 1291 when Isabel was 20. Afonso later succeeded his father as King of Portugal, known as Afonso the Brave. In addition to these 2 children, there are reports that Dom Dinis had several illegitimate children, but Saint Isabel dedicated herself to her own children and the establishment of charitable institutions, demonstrating an example of forgiveness and peace while dealing with family tensions and her husband's infidelities. 9. Generous heart. Saint Isabel, despite her position as Queen of Portugal, was widely recognized for her generous heart and simplicity. From a young age, she demonstrated a profound compassion for the needy, dedicating herself to charitable actions that benefited the poor and marginalized. In a world often marked by the opulence of the court, Isabel stood out for her humility and commitment to alleviating the suffering of others. Isabel did not hesitate to use the kingdom's resources to help those in need. She often disguised herself as a beggar to approach the most vulnerable communities, offering food and comfort to those in need. Her altruistic spirit not only inspired those around her but also established an example of compassionate leadership that transcended the norms of the time. In addition to her direct actions, she founded hospitals and charitable institutions, ensuring that the needy had access to medical care and shelter. Her devotion to social justice and service to the poor reflected a Christian ideal that valued the dignity of each individual, regardless of their social position. Saint Isabel became a symbol of charity and kindness, venerated not only as a queen but as a true mother to her people. Leave your prayer request in the comments so that Saint Isabel of Portugal may intercede for it before God. 8. Recognized miracles. Saint Isabel is widely recognized for having performed several miracles during her lifetime, which not only demonstrated her holiness but also her deep compassion for the needy. One of the most famous accounts involves her ability to heal the sick. It is said that many on the brink of death found relief and recovery through her intercessions, solidifying her reputation as a true benefactor. Another famous miracle is the story of the transformation of bread into roses. Once, when leaving home to distribute food to the poor, Isabel was confronted by her husband, King Dom Dinis, who was suspicious of her actions. To hide what she was carrying in her dress, she prayed fervently, and when she opened her mantle, the blessings manifested as roses instead of the bread she actually carried. This episode not only illustrates her dedication to helping the needy but also the divine protection surrounding her. These miracles contributed to the veneration of Saint Isabel as a protective saint of the poor and sick. 7. Conciliatory Queen. Saint Isabel, in addition to being a generous and charitable queen, also stood out as a true peacemaker in times of crisis. During her reign, she faced a period of great turbulence, marked by a civil war between her husband, King Dom Dinis, and her son, Afonso. The division between father and son threatened the peace and stability of the kingdom, and the situation was becoming increasingly delicate. With a peacemaking spirit, Isabel tirelessly dedicated herself to seeking reconciliation. She used her role as a mother and queen to mediate discussions between the two, promoting dialogue and understanding. Her unconditional love for both sides led her to intercede not only as a mediator but also as a figure of compassion and wisdom. Isabel believed that the unity of family and kingdom was fundamental to the prosperity of her people. 6. Life of prayer and fasting. Since her youth, Saint Isabel lived a life marked by prayer and fasting, dedicating herself deeply to her faith and the pursuit of closeness to God. Since the age of 12, when she married King Dom Dinis of Portugal, she not only assumed the role of queen but also that of a devoted servant of God, committing herself to live according to Christian teachings. Isabel understood that prayer was a powerful means of communication with God, and thus, she often withdrew for moments of solitude and contemplation. These practices helped her strengthen her spirituality and cultivate an intimate relationship with God amidst the responsibilities and challenges that life at court presented. Fasting, in turn, was for her a form of spiritual discipline, allowing her to renounce the comforts and pleasures of the world in favor of a greater focus on her inner life. By practicing fasting, Isabel sought not only to purify her body and mind but also to express solidarity with the needy, always remembering the importance of sharing her blessings with the less fortunate. This life of prayer and fasting shaped her character, reflecting in her actions and attitudes. The generosity and compassion that made her such an admired figure were rooted in this sincere devotion. Isabel not only lived her faith privately but also expressed it in her deeds, becoming an inspiring example of holiness for all who knew her and studied her life. Her spiritual journey exemplifies the importance of cultivating a deep relationship with God, even amidst the obligations and challenges of everyday life. 5. Founder of institutions. Saint Isabel, in her relentless pursuit to help those in need, stood out as the founder of several charitable institutions, including hospitals and monasteries, aimed at providing assistance to the poor and sick. Her vision was clear: she wanted to create spaces where those on the margins of society could find relief and care, reflecting her deep commitment to compassion and charity. She understood the difficulties faced by the less fortunate and, driven by a generous heart, dedicated resources and energy to the creation of these institutions. The hospitals she founded not only offered medical treatment but were also places where dignity and respect were prioritized, promoting a welcoming environment for the sick and needy. Additionally, the monasteries that Isabel established became centers for prayer and community assistance. In these spaces, the nuns who lived there devoted their lives to serving the poor, following the example set by their founder. Through these institutions, Isabel not only met the immediate needs of those who suffered but also promoted a model of solidarity and love that inspired generations. 4. Culture and intelligence. Saint Isabel not only stood out for her spiritual virtues but also for her culture and intelligence. From childhood, she had access to an education that enabled her to learn several languages and acquire practical knowledge that was rare for women of her time. This broad education reflected in her ability to communicate effectively and understand political and social issues, making her an even more respected figure. Isabel's intellectual curiosity led her to take an interest in various topics, from literature to philosophy, allowing her to actively participate in court conversations. Her ability to express herself in different languages not only helped her build diplomatic alliances but also brought her closer to people from diverse backgrounds and cultures, reinforcing her role as a conciliating queen. Isabel used her intelligence and knowledge in favor of her mission to help those in need. She understood the importance of educating others, and in her charitable initiatives, she also sought to promote education among the poorest, believing that knowledge was a powerful tool for social transformation. 3. Peace after death. After the death of Dom Dinis, Saint Isabel demonstrated deep devotion and love, dedicating herself to the suffrage of her husband's soul. This attitude not only reflected her generous and compassionate character but also her belief in the importance of prayer and forgiveness. Isabel, even in the face of difficulties she encountered during their marriage, chose to cultivate a spirit of reconciliation and empathy. Isabel spent hours in prayer, asking God to receive Dom Dinis's soul with mercy. This practice of intercession for him is a clear demonstration of her commitment to Christian values, which emphasize forgiveness and charity, even in the most challenging circumstances. The Queen understood that, despite human imperfections, true love extends beyond life, and her concern for her husband's salvation was a manifestation of this unconditional love. In addition to her prayers, Isabel commissioned masses and founded charitable works in memory of Dom Dinis, reinforcing her desire for him to find peace in eternal life. This gesture of love not only honored the king's memory but also served as a powerful example of how forgiveness and compassion can transcend disagreements and create a lasting legacy. 2. Death. Saint Isabel of Portugal passed away on July 4, 1336, at the age of 65. In the last years of her life, after the death of her husband, Dom Dinis, she retired to the monastery of Santa Clara Velha in Coimbra, where she lived a life of prayer and service. Even while dedicating herself to a religious life, she continued to act as a mediator of conflicts until the end of her life, including those between her son, King Afonso IV, and the King of Castile. Her death was surrounded by great reverence, and the legacy of her holiness continued to grow over the centuries. Saint Isabel was buried in the church of the monastery in Coimbra, and years later, her body was found incorrupt, which was interpreted as yet another sign of her sanctity. 1. Late Canonization and Liturgical Day. The canonization of Saint Isabel of Portugal is a process that reflects not only her virtuous life but also the way the Church recognized and valued her contribution to Christianity. Beatified in 1516 by Pope Leo X, Isabel was already seen as a figure of holiness and devotion, admired for her charity and her ability to mediate conflicts. However, it was only in 1625 that she was officially canonized by Pope Urban VIII, indicating a long period of gradual recognition of her life and work. This delay in canonization can be attributed to various factors, including the historical and social circumstances of the time, as well as the need for a rigorous process to validate miracles attributed to her intercession. The official recognition of her sanctity in 1625 consolidated her image as a powerful intercessor, and over the years, her stories of miracles and virtues were celebrated and revered, especially in Portugal. The liturgical day dedicated to Saint Isabel of Portugal is celebrated on July 4th. And we have reached the end of another story full of curiosities. Don't forget to leave in the comments which saint's curiosities you would like to see here on the channel. See you in the next story.